Hello there, welcome to this edition of Global Business Africa. For the next 30 minutes, we'll focus on all the key business news stories from around Africa. From Cairo to Lagos, Johannesburg and Nairobi, we've got you covered. Here's what's coming up. We'll be examining the global response to the Ebola outbreak in West Africa in detail. A sense of normalcy returns to Tripoli after weeks of intense fighting. And more Senegalese farmers are turning to organic farming to boost food output and build self-sustaining communities. Let's start tonight, however, with arguably the main story from Africa, that of the Ebola outbreak. Here's some of the latest developments on that. Sierra Leone has ordered the quarantine with immediate effect of 3 districts and 12 tribal chiefdoms. That effectively affects about 1 million or so people. And this is all part of efforts to control the Ebola outbreak over there. The country's president, Ernest Bai Koroma, announced the northern districts of Port Loko and Bombali were to be closed off, along with the southern district of Moyamba. The eastern districts of Kenema and Calhoun are already under quarantine. Essentially, more than a third of the population of 6 million in about 5 of the nation's 14 districts are now unable to move freely. The deadliest Ebola epidemic on record has infected almost 6,000 people across West Africa and killed about half of them, according to data compiled by the World Health Organization. Now, the risk of Ebola spreading is not the only concern for people living in West Africa. A slowdown in business activity following the outbreak is another current headache. In Guinea, for example, one of the countries affected by the disease, business operators and investors are worried about the situation. A lack of movement effectively inhibits trade. Flight cancellations are leading to low hotel occupancy, and inflation is rising fast as traders hoard their goods. The World Bank estimates that this particular outbreak will cost Guinea about $142 million worth of output. That's roughly 2.3% of the country's GDP.
The restaurant I manage is no longer working. Since we started talking about Ebola, you can count the clients we have. People don't understand. They don't come here to eat because they're afraid. I can say they are right. You don't want to eat just anywhere.
To be honest, we're almost at 0% occupancy. I have 50 rooms here and just 2 are filled. There are Senegalese who can't pay anymore because the border is closed and there aren't any flights.
Salaries here aren't just for the hotel's employees. It isn't like Europe. Here, they have whole families to support, so we've asked the government to help us in this effort to maintain jobs. We've asked for help such as temporary tax exemptions, especially social taxes and value-added tax. This is in order to at least save and keep in place the employment structure.
Now, predictably and with good reason, the fight against Ebola dominated speeches by African leaders who were attending the UN General Assembly in New York. They were all in agreement that there needs to be a combined and concerted effort to contain the virus, while at the same time not isolating the affected economies in West Africa.
While Nigeria was able to respond effectively to control the spread of the disease, the situation in Liberia and Sierra Leone requires sustainable collective global action to contain. Through the concerted effort of our healthcare professionals, the World Health Organization, and our international partners, we have been able to contain the Ebola virus disease, and we can confidently say that Nigeria is today Ebola-free.
The recent outbreak of Ebola in some West African states and the number of lives that have been unnecessarily lost is one clear example of the challenges that developing countries continue to contend with. We believe that Ebola would have been contained within a few days had it been an outbreak in the developed world. We are pleased that the United Nations, under the leadership of the Secretary General, is deploying a mission to coordinate efforts to combat the virus. Beyond the tragedy of the thousands who have lost lives and loved ones, and the many more living with a threat, livelihoods and businesses have collapsed, and aspirations for shared prosperity continue to shrink day by day. Kenya stands in solidarity with the countries affected by this devastating virus. Earlier this month, the Kenyan people gave $1 million to the effort to bring this crisis under control, and we stand ready to do more.
Now, the World Bank on Thursday did announce that it would give another $170 million to help West African countries contain the spread of the Ebola virus. It nearly doubles its total contributions to the funds available to fight an epidemic that's claimed nearly 3,000 lives to date. Now, the funds, most of which still must be approved by the bank's executive board, will be used to increase the health workforce available, buying up supplies and, of course, building up stronger health systems in Guinea, Liberia and Sierra Leone. Those three countries have been hardest hit by the disease. Now then, let's move on to some more macro news now. The Ghanaian President John Dramani Mahama, he hopes that his country can begin a 3-year financial aid package with the International Monetary Fund by January 2015. While visiting the New York Stock Exchange, Mr. Mahama said the bailout will help Ghana to stabilize its macroeconomic environment. Ghana started talks with the IMF earlier this month on the 16th of September, hoping to secure funds to help it salvage its economy. The West African nation is facing a vast array of economic challenges, including inflation in double digits, a fairly stubborn budget deficit, and a currency that's fallen by about 40% this year against the American dollar. Over in East Africa, Kenya, Uganda and Rwanda have invited bids for consultants to oversee a feasibility study for connecting all three nations using a high-voltage power line in order to meet growing demand for electricity and to deepen the integration of their respective grids. Now, the project essentially aims to build a 400 kilovolt electricity line running from Olkaria, that's around Kenya's Rift Valley area, where the country is expanding its geothermal power output, through Uganda to Birembo in Rwanda. The three nations are all members of the five-nation East African community. They're battling to keep up with the rising demand for power as their economies grow. Investors and businessmen often complain of erratic and expensive power. The consultant who eventually does get this bid will need to examine power needs and potential for exports and imports right through to 2035 and also assess designs and other details of the project. Bids are due by the 17th of October this year. About 245,000 Zimbabwean nationals living and working in South Africa under the Zimbabwe Special Dispensation should start processing the new visa applications for an extended stay from the 1st of October. According to the South African Home Affairs Minister Malusi Gigaba, they don't plan to have a repeat of the chaotic queue seen in 2010. That's the last time they applied for their visas. This time round, Zimbabwe nationals will have to register online first and then be invited to an interview at one of the 10 visa facilitation centers around South Africa.
We've been in constant discussions with the SAPS about the fingerprint clearing process. And so they've assured us that come the commencement of this process, they are going to be ready. We will continue working alongside them, together with the stakeholders, to ensure that whatever problems are encountered in the process are dealt with. Obviously, you can't expect a process of this scale and within such a definite short period of time to proceed smoothly without hitches and hiccups.
Because in order for you to qualify for this permit, you need to be cleared by the SAPS. And in terms of our understanding, it takes plus minus 8 weeks for you to get a police clearance. And also this application, also if it starts from the 1st, and it takes plus minus 8 weeks. If you tie the two, it doesn't tie all together.
Let's take it to North Africa, where life is slowly returning to normal in Tripoli, Libya's capital, after Islamists and their allies captured it last month. This follows, of course, weeks of fairly intense fighting. Shops there, however, are now doing business again. The streets are now bustling with activity too. CCTV's Penina Kariba reports that Tripoli's 2.2 million residents are enjoying the lull.
3 years after the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi, Libya is divided. The government and elected parliament have relocated to Tobruk in the Far East since losing control of Tripoli last month. An rival assembly and government has been set up by the Misrata-led alliance, which now controls the capital. For Tripoli residents, the pause in fighting has allowed a semblance of normal life to return. Families flock to the beach to soak up the late summer sun, and the markets in the old city are bustling with shoppers.
I thank God that the people have started to go out. There is now movement in the market, whereas before there wasn't a lot of movement. But now I thank God that people are back and they are shopping.
The past few months have been hard on Libyans due to shortages in basic supplies like food and fuel, as well as electricity cuts. But things are starting to get back to normal, thank God.
Wholesalers on Al-Karimiyya Street, considered to be the largest suppliers for the city, have also reopened their doors after closing for over a month. Shop owner Abdul Majed Mohammed spoke of his relief that the siege was over.
We had to close for almost 45 days, and today we've opened. Thank God. There's security and cars. The entire market is working, selling food and home supplies.
There is relief at the gas pump as well. The lengthy queues for petrol have dwindled from days to hours.
Before, we used to stay 3 days to fuel our car. Now, thank God, we only stay an hour or an hour and a half.
There's no telling how long this period of calm may last in Tripoli. Diplomats say Libya is turning into a conflict zone for competing regional powers, and the North African oil producer faces the real prospect of becoming a failed state as dozens of former rebel groups who united to topple Gaddafi now fight each other for power and a share of Libya's oil wealth. Penina Karibe, CCTV.
Right then, 10 minutes in, quick run through the equity markets here for you today. The broadly all did close in the red today. There was quite a bit of a sell-off on Axis Bank shares over in Nigeria. Suspension, of course, on that particular share did come to an end today. Profit taking, that's a basic underlying drive of the losses you're seeing in East Africa, the NSE 20. We usually don't cover the stock exchange in Dar es Salaam, but this will definitely be of interest to you, Frontier Warriors. Tanzania has lifted limits on foreign share ownership. The limit before 60% of any outstanding shares. That, however, according to Reuters, is now out of play. Renewable energy in Africa. Everyone's talking about it, but getting it on the ground and into your home is a whole different ballgame. We'll be looking at some solutions next. Africa is on the move. It's home to 7 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies. We help you make sense of the fast-changing African business landscape. We take you where the business is happening.
African leaders have been urged to make it easier to move and do business across borders within the African continent.
Africans should be free to move in their continent, to do business, to interact, if we are to grow the levels of investment and trade that will ensure that we are able to create the jobs for our people that we require.
Welcome back to the program. Now, on Tuesday, a UN summit on climate change ended with a set of goals to expand the use and access to renewable energy and to raise the billions the developing countries desperately need to adapt to climate change. Now, progress to that end requires a change in how countries generate the energy that they use. One of the initiatives announced at the summit aimed to raise a share of renewable electricity, or rather renewable energy sources used in power generation in 19 countries in Eastern and Southern Africa to about 40% by 2030, from the current figure of about 10%. In some economies like South Africa and Egypt, well over 80% of their electricity comes from fossil fuels, and that makes the switch to more renewable sources quite the challenge.
As political leaders and captains of industries, as individuals, we have no longer a choice. We simply have an obligation. And you, our leaders, you must have the courage. You must have the courage to make decisions that will make you unpopular for some thousands of your citizens, but will protect us, the billions of people, and will protect the future of our planet and the future of our grandchildren.
Tough decisions do indeed lay ahead. Let's get more details on that particular session of the Climate Change Summit from Nick Harper, who's been covering the UN General Assembly for us over the last couple of days. Nick, the plan at play here places quite a bit of emphasis on renewable energy, but could natural gas be considered as an intermediate step towards raising the percentage of renewable electricity supply?
Well, it may well have to be. As you said a moment ago, this is definitely a challenge. They're setting themselves some very ambitious targets over the next 15 years. At the moment, 4/5 of all electricity in East and South Africa comes from fossil fuels, and they want to change that and move towards other types of energy generation. They want to increase renewable energy use from 12%, that's what it's currently at, to around 40% by the year 2030. And they're hoping that if they can do that, they can meet half of the demand for all electricity across the continent through renewable energy. They're looking at things like hydroelectric power, solar, and also geothermal and wind, especially in countries like Ethiopia, Kenya and Tanzania. But for the short term, they may have to turn their attention to things like natural gas to try and fill that gap in between while they get all of the processes that they need and the infrastructure built so that they can have renewable energy through hydroelectric power, wind, etc.
Indeed. Aside from hydro, however, wind and solar power by definition are not really suitable for base load generation, and their upfront costs can be absolutely prohibitive on a large scale. So where do they fit into this broader generation mix in the African Clean Energy Corridor plan?
Well, the mix is going to be very difficult. At this stage, they're looking to get as much buy-in as possible. They have 32 partners on board at the moment. That includes 19 countries. And very much the idea behind it, the one that they pushed during the summit on Tuesday, was this idea of cooperation, of working together. Because in terms of the generational mix itself, while they have things like hydroelectric and geothermal, it will take time to have all of those fully operational. So they need those countries to work together to make it easier for those sort of renewable energies to be used to create the electricity that's so badly needed.
Yes, indeed. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for that. That's Nick Harper live in New York. Now, of course, courage from policymakers, to paraphrase something that Graça Machel said, is one thing. But there are a couple of other issues that private enterprise and individual consumers can do to make that transition to more renewable power a lot easier. Let's figure out what one of them is. Cindy Kerr is the Global Marketing Director at Sunny Money. It's a social enterprise in the domestic solar power sector. She's with me in studio right now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Your business model is frankly fairly interesting. The sales models for starters, 2010, 2009, 10,000 units sold, but from then on the graph has just gone up exponentially. What are sales now?
Well, we found a model that works and we could scale it in 5 countries, and that's the key, in that there's great solar products available, you know, affordable lights now costing $10 up to $100, but there wasn't really a way to get them to people, and we found a scalable model to do that. So now we've sold 1.3 million lights, and these are small solar lights, no installation required, panels and lights all in one, and they essentially replace kerosene, which is what most people are using in the 85% of the population that doesn't have access to electricity.
And that is your goal, to essentially eliminate all kerosene lighting right across Africa.
Yes, our goal is to kick out kerosene, which is used about 110 million households in sub-Saharan Africa, and it's expensive, it's toxic, it's hard to read by, and it's very unhealthy and bad for the environment, obviously.
Well, let's look at your bottom line. Is Sunny Money in its current state a self-sustaining, profitable enterprise? Can it pay its own bills by selling these lights alone?
We're not there yet, but we're close. Several of our countries are very close to being self-sustaining, but there's such a need for awareness and distribution and logistics and products. But we charge a margin, we charge a fair margin, but our goal is to get the market going and keep it sustaining until other players come there and can get lights to everyone.
But most of the clients that you reach out to, I mean, by definition, these are guys who are off-grid. So you're looking at rural areas in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Zambia, Malawi, and these are often fairly hard to get to, and given the state of infrastructure, well, it can be pretty expensive too. So how do you keep the price of these labs down?
Well, we found a really cost-effective and scalable model, and we actually work through schools first. We work through the head teachers, and we present to them the case for kids study an hour or two longer every night, even 3 hours longer, and we sell the lights through the head teachers, and then we stay there for maybe a school term or two, and after that we then cultivate agents in the community and in the shops and the area, so that they can then get lights from us. We send them to them, and then they can keep on selling them.
What sort of results are you seeing in terms of the educational impact, the fact that kids can now read in a non-toxic environment?
It's incredible. We're backed by a UK charity called SolarAid, and they measure the impact of each solar light. I mean, not only does it save about 15 to 20% of a household's savings a month on their income,
in terms of annual income,
and the children study 1 to 3 hours more a night, and a school that has, you know, a high percentage of kids using the solar lights, the scores of the whole school go up.
We were talking about this before we came on air, this perfect storm, if you will, that's essentially combining to make solar now a viable, cost-effective off-grid solution. Because we're looking back to about, say, 2005, 2003 even, solar panels were prohibitively expensive. But what's making it different now?
Yeah, I wish I could show you the product, because the cost improvements and the technology improvements, the cost has gone down in, you know, by, I don't know, 150, 200%. The solar panels are this big, the lights are this big, they light a whole house. And it's just because of the technology advancements and the cost decreases. And now we can offer 2-year warranties, 5-year battery life. So there's just so much improvement. So if you bought a portable solar light 3 years ago and it didn't work, you need to check out sunnymoney.org and see the lights we have now.
All right, one last question very quickly. What sort of regulatory barriers do you often face in doing business across Africa? Because I know taxes, for example, can be a huge, huge issue. Do they affect you?
Well, they are facing us. We had a victory in Kenya just in June. The VAT tax was lifted off of solar lights, so we were able to lower prices immediately 16%. We're facing that in other countries, you know, where they've added a VAT tax or there's a lot of duty fees. It's really important that we work with governments to keep those taxes off. It saves billions of dollars on the people that need it most.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time this
evening. Thank you.
That's Cindy Kerr. She's the Global Marketing Director at Sunny Money. It's a fairly interesting business model. This will keep a fairly close eye on it moving forward. Let's make a quick run through commodity prices here for you, see exactly what's been going on. Crude oil, still firmly in languishing, if you will, under $100 a barrel. Gold not faring any better. 1213.86 is a relevant number per ounce over there. Not that it's doing any good for miners in South Africa. Resource stocks essentially dragged the JSE top 40 much lower today. We'll be diving into agriculture next. Senegalese farmers are turning a lot more to organic farming, and they're selling the produce online. Meshing of these two worlds will be covered in detail next.
BizAsia. Asia means business.
Welcome back. A group of young tech entrepreneurs in Senegal have created an online platform where farmers can sell their organic produce with the aim of expanding the reach of their markets. Now, local farmers who've been growing organic produce with the help of local agricultural NGOs say this might just see their business grow beyond the confines of their borders. The online organic pursuit graces our grassroots segment tonight.
Like much of Africa, farming in Senegal forms the backbone of the economy, employing more than 60% of the population and accounts for about 19% of the country's GDP. This market in the capital, Dakar, is one of the few places that sells organic food such as tomatoes, carrots, lettuce, potatoes and onions. Backed by a local agriculture NGO, Enter, organic farmers can come and sell their produce at the market here. The NGO aims to promote organic horticulture in order to help poor farmers improve their food supply and nutrition, as well as generate an income.
Aujourd'hui, nous sommes arrivés à des produits de qualité.
We can now find quality products. We can find them in conventional markets as well.
Certains de nos producteurs.
Their produce is sold mostly to upmarket supermarkets and other outlets. Inspired by what the farmers are trying to achieve, a group of young tech entrepreneurs have created an online platform where farmers can sell their produce. Their platform, Suratul, meaning it's not far in the local Wolof language, aims to make agriculture products available to a wider public by minimizing the distance between the farmer in the rural areas and the buyers in the urban areas.
We noticed that there were no structures in place for those selling local organic produce and that they needed a platform where they could sell their products and make them accessible to their customers. Before, the only place they could sell their products was during international trade fairs, which will only last about 15 days twice a year. It is not enough for a woman whose livelihood depends on selling these products. So we taught them that with technology, we can come up with a platform that can give them visibility to sell their products.
Suratul not only offers products that are usually not found in markets for conventional food, but it also allows customers to shop in the comfort of their homes with flexible payment methods.
The site has had many visitors. We at least get 2 to 3 orders during the day, and for a start, that's quite good, because the Senegalese people are not very familiar with e-commerce, and our role is to get them to start shopping online and to get them to trust this process.
It is a move that has many in the agriculture sector hoping that the authorities can come up with strategies not only to support organic farming, but also promote organic farming as a viable source of foreign currency. Peter Kaba, CCTV.
Right, now 2 new Apple products have hit speed bumps, portending a fairly interesting public relations crisis for Apple. Buyers of the iPhone 6 Plus discovered that their handsets apparently could bend when they put it in their back pockets. The company also pulled its latest mobile operating system update after reports of dropped cellular service, among other matters. Now, Bendgate, as this problem has been dubbed, as a reminder of 2010's AntennaGate, when iPhone 4 users reported a design flaw that caused dropped calls. Apple did not comment on the bending phone reports, but it did announce it was investigating reports of an issue with an update to iOS 8. In the meantime, don't upgrade to iOS 8.01. Whatever you do, for your own good, don't do it. All right, Bendgate aside, quick run through the currencies here for you. The dollar is having an absolute time in the market of, going up and getting out a bunch of gains, rather, off the notion that rates might go up at some point in time. Consequently, the rand is at an 8-month low, mainly attributable, of course, to US dollar strength. It's about 2% or so down in the last week or so. That's where we wrap it up for this edition of Global Business. Thank you so much for your time. If you missed anything on this program, check us out online, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook and so on. And send your feedback to globalbusinessafrica@cctv.com is the relevant email. In the meantime, we'll see you in the next 23 hours. Thank you for watching. I'm Ramanya.